Welcome to the Life Self-Mastery Podcast, where we bring in entrepreneurs who have created online businesses and improved their lifestyles. Here's your host, Rohit Malhotra.
Hi everyone, this is Rohit from lifeselfmastering.com, and today I'm excited to have James Sowers, who is a Korean American businessman and philanthropist. He's a former singer-songwriter who had his music career tragically ended by a reckless driver in a car accident. He's currently advising companies as an ICO and crypto asset executive. He's invested in over 30 startups and a dozen initial coin offerings. He's also an advisor to a number of ICOs. James is an early blockchain and cryptocurrency adopter. Welcome to the show, James.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So, can you talk about, how did you get your first job and how did you get in this crazy world of startups?
I like it's the world of startups. Well, it's kind of interesting because people always ask, how did you get into blockchain? How did you get into startups and things of that nature? And I always like to start, with the fact I'm actually was an orphan as a child. I'm adopted from South Korea. But when I was a little kid, I was like one of them little hustlers, would buy something for, a nickel and try to sell it for more. So, for 25 cents or whatever, 10 cents, you could get a pack of like swimsuit cards or baseball cards back then. And, I would break open the pack and sell the individual cards to make a profit. Just keep, basically reinvesting the profits. And then what happened is over time, as a child, I kept saving money. And by the time I was about 19 years old, I started investing in stocks. And I had gotten lucky because one of them had done really well over the years. And a couple of years ago, it was about middle of 2016, I started participating in crowd sales. And the end of 2016, I really started getting involved in investing in startups. So that's kind of how I got there.
Okay, and you were earlier a singer and songwriter, and how did music come into picture, and why did you stop? How did the music career stop?
Yeah, since I was a kid, it's kind of strange. Like when I was in 7th or 8th grade, I taught myself how to play guitar and keyboard and things like that, and a little cheap keyboard, probably like a $10 little Casio keyboard or whatever, a Yamaha. And I had bought it's called a Hondo guitar, which was a kind of an inexpensive guitar, the money I had saved up. And I go to the library because back then we didn't really have like YouTube or the internet, which is, really great now because people can learn anything for free. But back then you had to go to the library. I used to walk to the library. This thing called the Gully. It was kind of like a woods, and read all these books about, even about investing and stuff and about people like the Rockefellers and things like that, just trying to learn how people became successful. Because when I grew up, we were kind of poor, but I got into music and taught myself how to do that. And then when I was 18, I used to rap, and I actually performed at the Apollo Theater on amateur night. And then a few years went by, probably about maybe 9-10 years, and I recorded my own CD and released it myself because I had tried to get some independent record deals that kind of fell through. So I released it myself, and it was in a couple of local stores in Baltimore, Maryland, where I grew up, like Record and Tape Traders, Sam Goody's, Music Land, and even in local Barnes and Noble and Borders. And I kind of like joke around. I was bad luck for those stores because most of them are closed down now. I think Barnes and Noble is the only one that's still left. And so I just did that, and the songs got on iTunes, and I think Rhapsody and things like that, and some college radio stations. But I think it was around March 9th of 2012, somebody ran a red light and hit me. So I kind of have problems with my back and spine. I even had a brain injury, and I had trouble remembering my songs and playing the music. So I've been trying to teach myself to play guitar again and stuff like that, but I still have some problems with it. So that's kind of why I stopped, because a lot of people don't realize if you play music professionally, it takes a lot of energy and takes a lot of physicality, believe it or not. I also have two fractured ribs that didn't heal correctly, apparently, which I thought something was wrong with my ribs. And they said, oh, nothing's wrong. It's referred pain from your spine. But just recently, I think it was in October, I had a CAT scan, whatever they call it. And they said I had 2 fractured ribs that didn't heal right. So that's kind of another issue I'm dealing with that. So that was kind of most of the reasons why I stopped doing the music.
Okay, and it's after your music career that you started investing into startups and got into the whole startup game?
Yeah, it was around the end of 2016, middle of 2016. I mean, I had gotten to crypto around 2013. I had bought Bitcoin, but basically, yeah, it was startups around 2016.
Yeah, you're talking about Bitcoin. 2018 was a crazy year for Bitcoin. What are your thoughts about Bitcoin, Ethereum? Should one invest into Bitcoin? I've invested into Ethereum, but I'm not allowed to invest into Ethereum anymore because the government in my country does not allow me. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I'm a registered investment advisor, so I don't really give investment advice. But I think more so than the price of Bitcoin or Ethereum, the technology is what's important. So, Bitcoin was kind of a computer science miracle, the way it was created and everything. And of course, the creator's anonymous. We don't know who it is. It's my opinion. It's probably not just one person, maybe a group of people, and maybe even aided by computers and things like that. But I think that the technology one day going forward, that how we have paper money is kind of disappearing. Even before Bitcoin, I mean, people had checking accounts, credit cards, PayPal. And I've never been to China, but I've heard like in places like that, Apple Pay and Samsung Pay and things like that, when you go into Starbucks, people put up their phone and use those services, that there's not a whole lot of paper money really being used anymore. So I really think that one day that it's almost going to be like when we send an email, money is going to be like just sending an email where you press a button on your phone or some device in order to make payments. So it's going to be like a digital money, whether or not it's Bitcoin or some type of cryptocurrency, I don't think anybody knows, but it'll probably be some kind of stable coin though. That could be even like USD coin or, China coin or whatever, Japan coin, they might call it yen or whatever, tokenized yen or digital euro. But I do think money will become digital, 100% digital one day, because it probably costs them more money to print the money now than on paper than it's actually worth if you're printing dollars. Like I've heard that pennies and stuff like that, it costs more to mint a penny than a penny's worth.
Yeah, I completely agree. But there's so much of fear about Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, and rightfully so. But what are your thoughts on the way ahead? Where do you think the Bitcoin and Ethereum price will be going?
Well, Ethereum, I guess, because the biggest thing with Ethereum when it was going up a lot of people had to use it to participate in token sales, so they had to buy the Ethereum to participate. So I think that kind of drove up the price a lot. And people were building their dApps, on the Ethereum platform. So I think a lot of the price is going to have to be the demand. So the question is going to be in the future, is it going to be a great demand to build an Ethereum? I'm not really sure that that's the case, but I don't think anybody knows. I think that there's going to have to be a lot of technological advances in order for that to keep happening. Because there's a lot of competition now. In the beginning, it was just Bitcoin. Then it was Bitcoin and Ethereum. And now there's a number of major platforms. I mean, there's EOS, there's Cardano. There's a number of them. There's a number of them we've probably never even heard of or haven't even been invented yet. So I think it's impossible to know the future of what's actually going to happen with these things. But Bitcoin was important because it was the first one. So I don't think it's going to go away because Bitcoin has massive scale. And I think it's really possible, too, that Bitcoin could even be adapted someday. Because I know they say there's only 21 million. It can never be minted. I don't really believe that that's actually true. Because even when you get to the 21 million, you could technically fork it and keep creating more Bitcoin. Because the problem with Bitcoin is the proof of work, the further you get with the computation, it takes more and more energy to confirm the blocks. So once all 21 million are minted, the question is what's going to happen? I don't think anyone knows. There's a lot of different speculation. But I do think that some people who think that Bitcoin is going to be the reserve currency, if they end up being right, it's not going to be in the current state that it's in. Because I think it's just too much proof of work and too much energy required for that to be the reserve currency. So what would have to happen is the code would have to be forked. And maybe you could have an unlimited amount and kind of peg it to $1 and make that a reserve currency in some way. Or use the technology.
Okay, got it. You advise many companies to do ICOs. Do you think ICOs are going to replace the venture capital scene, or is it going to change the entire funding scene?
I don't think that that's going to happen the way everyone thinks it's going to happen. I think the initial coin offering, the real reason to do an initial coin offering, people kind of abused it. Because initially crowd sales was to build community and get like the diehards involved in a certain project and reward the developers and the early participants. But then, a few of them raised an enormous amount of money and it got out of hand. So then everyone started doing it just to raise money. Yeah, I don't think that was a good thing. I think what's going to happen is tokens are going to be used in companies that we know of, even like a Facebook or an Amazon possibly as a reward system. So it may replace like, you have Starbucks rewards and things like that. So tokens could end up replacing things like that or even become a currency type of thing within a system. But I don't think it's going to replace venture capital in any way. I think if anything, what ICOs did with the large amounts of money that were raised caused people like SoftBank to realize, there's an enormous demand for money out there. And they started writing enormous checks with the Vision Fund. And I've noticed, too, that in venture funding, it's getting really, really hard at the seed level to raise a lot of money. And it's getting hard to go from seed to Series A and even from A to B. But some of the B rounds, I saw one the other day, it was some robotics company, had a $600 million Series B. I mean, that's just a ridiculous amount of money for a Series B. And I'm also noticing a lot of Series Bs and Cs are over $100 million. So I definitely don't think that venture capital has been disrupted by initial coin offerings. If anything, SoftBank and mega funds are going to disrupt the way companies are funded, because it's going to take so much money now to fund a company. And what's going to happen is a lot of the seed companies, I think founders and even employees are going to get frustrated, and it's going to be enormously hard to attract talent when another company just raised $600 million. Or there was one this morning I saw in China raised $1.5 billion from SoftBank. So obviously the top talent's going to go to those companies.
I completely agree. SoftBank is really disrupting, companies in India and China. It's very difficult to get away from SoftBank. Forbes recently named you as one of the top 50 angel investors. So, do you have, exits from some of the investments that you've made?
Yeah, I'm not sure where that list was compiled from, but most of the exits I have are from initial coin offerings. I mean, it's kind of funny because with initial coin offerings, at one time they said, there's this many unicorns in initial coin offerings, but the tokens traded every day on different exchanges. So, just because it was a unicorn one day, most of those now, I would say almost all of them aren't unicorns anymore. So it's maybe 2 or 3. So it's kind of funny that they even called those unicorns. But at one time, though, a number of initial coin offerings that I had participated in had become unicorns. I know in one of my bios, I think, it said I had participated in at least 12 initial coin offerings or whatever. But overall, crowd sales before it was called initial coin offerings, I mean, I was in way more than that. I mean, it's almost 2 million accounts. It's just crazy. So if you were there in the beginning, you were lucky because, you hit all the ones that had big returns on paper in the beginning. The problem was, though, that they weren't as liquid until recently. A lot of them become more liquid, but the price is so much lower than it used to be. So like Qtum at one time was like, I think $116, but I couldn't sell it for that price for the size I had because it wasn't liquid enough for that. So it's kind of interesting that way because now there's even an over-the-counter market for some of the altcoins. But back around, say, December of 2017, when everything was just going straight up like a rocket, unbelievably, there wasn't a lot of liquidity to sell things. I mean, you had to upload on like 10 different exchanges and then try to get filled. It was kind of a nightmare, and there was fees transferring from this to that. It was just crazy.
Okay. And, what do you look for in an entrepreneur, when you're looking to invest into them? Are you looking at a particular industry or are you, sector agnostic?
Yeah, I'm kind of sector agnostic. I think it really boils down to the founder, how determined they really are, how relentless they really are. But also one thing I've learned is how well they adapt. Because I think things are changing so fast in the world today, especially with technology, and just even things you would never think of, like the way SoftBank's come in and just started writing these ridiculous sized checks, is how can someone adapt? Because unfortunately, when SoftBank can write somebody $1 billion check, you could have the most relentless founder, the best team, but that amount of money, a competitor might be able to kill you with $1 billion. I mean, that's yet to be determined, but I'm starting to think that kind of money might actually be a differentiator, because I know Google and Facebook and Amazon, they won't admit it, but they're monopolies, and if they're not monopolies, they're like duopolies or whatever you want to call them. And the problem is when someone has that much money, they can just buy all the customers and buy all the employees and create their own monopoly. So it's going to be interesting to see in the future if that comes into play. I mean, I don't think anyone knows, but I think it's going to be very, very hard now, and you're really going to have to be adaptable and resourceful to be able to compete with companies that have that much money.
Got it. And what sort of traction do you look for when when an entrepreneur reaches out to you and looks at getting some angel investments from you?
Yeah, things change over time, because even myself, I'm adapting a lot, because back when I started, if someone just had an MVP, then they go into an accelerator like Y Combinator or 500 Startups or Alchemist Accelerator. I'm actually a mentor at Alchemist Accelerator in Silicon Valley. Then that was kind of a really good signal. And, because you don't really just invest in ideas, really. I mean, you're investing in people, but they have to be able to prove they could do something. They could get into the accelerator, they could make a minimum viable product and things like that. But now that's not even enough, because now really I look for them to have some kind of, annual recurring revenue, some kind of monthly revenue, between 10 and 50,000 a month, because now it's so easy to start a startup. There's too many people doing it. Everyone from Stanford wants to have a startup now. Everyone from Harvard wants to have a startup. So everyone's smart, and the competition is enormous. I mean, it's so many smart people. So you really have to prove now that you have some type of product market fit with revenue and things of that nature. And even now, I kind of wonder, just because you have revenue 10 to 50,000 a month, is that even enough? Because SoftBank writes your competitor a $600 million check. What do you do?
Right. Yeah, no, I completely agree on that. You've got to be really resourceful and really, prove that you can, take it to the next level. But, of all the investments that you have, how do you support them, and instead of just, backing them with money? Are you helping them in any other way?
Yeah, I try to help them however I can. So the reason I say it kind of broadly like that is because, there's some people out there that will invest in the companies and try to tell them what to do and all this good stuff. Like, I don't really believe in that. So if when I invest in the founders, I kind of look at it like family. So, if they need something, they can always call me or text me or whatever anytime they want to, and I can try to help in any way I can, if possible. So there are a lot of companies that'll text me, weekly, or some of them, if there's a problem, they'll call, or sometimes they'll be, daily for a few days or whatever to try to help them solve the problem or help make introductions if someone else can help, if they can help better than I can, because, sometimes you don't always know the answer. And I think it's better if you don't know the answer to tell them and try to help find someone else who can help them with that, instead of try to pretend you're an expert at everything. So I just try to help in any way I can.
Okay. And, how do you get the deal flow from, you made investment into a lot of startups, and you're advising a lot of startups to do ICOs, or, do you get the deal flows from the accelerators and then the funds that you're advising?
Yeah, a lot of deal flow. I mean, I'm invited to demo days, so you get to see a lot of companies, the accelerators. And then, I actually got a lot of inbox too, where people are just, I guess cold emailing is the best way to explain it. But it's kind of hard to get somebody to invest off of a cold email, because you don't really know the person, you can't meet them. I mean, you could go meet them eventually, but really the thing now I really am most concerned about is I want to make sure that the founders aren't going to quit. I think it's really hard to know that, because sometimes quitting is the right thing. So, if you have a company and you have some revenue and you can sell the company, and that's the only alternative other than going to zero, that's probably the best decision. But, really, as venture and angel investing, you're kind of looking for outliers. So the chances are 99% of them are probably going to fail, which failure may not even be a zero. Even a 1x is considered a failure, in venture investing, because you're looking for the next Uber or the next Airbnb or the next Facebook or the next Amazon. And, maybe 1 out of 1,000 companies is going to have that kind of return. But that's what you're looking for. So you're looking for like serious outliers. I think a lot of it has to be the founder's life work. So it really has to be their life work that when things get hard, they're not just going to give up. And I'm starting to think now it really has to be something too, where the moat is something that isn't really obvious. Because I invest in a company called ShearShare, and anyone could make an app that does what they do, but their moat is that the guy, Dr. Ty Codwell, he's got a PhD in barbacology. I may not even be saying that right, but there's not very many of them in the world. And in his industry, he's like world renowned. He's an expert. He's a celebrity barber and things like that. So in that field, that's his life's work. So I'm really happy about them, and they're doing really well. And I think that it'd be really hard for someone like a SoftBank just to write someone a $500 million check and kill them, because if you or I could start that kind of business, but if we started calling the hair salons and trying to get the barbers on board and people like that, they would hang up on us. They'd be like, who are you clowns? But when he calls, it's like, oh my God, we're talking to this guy. He's a legend in that field. So it gives them the opportunity to create a market that doesn't exist. And by the time someone like SoftBank comes in to try to disrupt it with a lot of money, I don't really think it's going to be that big of a difference, because, he has enormous street cred, and you can't buy that.
Correct. Yeah. You've been an angel investor for a couple of years. I want to know what is your take on how much of a portfolio should be into risky investments, considering that somebody has money in cash equivalent or into stocks or real estate. What is your take on how much money somebody who's young, somebody into their 20s and 30s?
Yeah, well, I mean, the United States, it's a little bit different than in other countries. Like I've heard that because in the United States you have to be an accredited investor, and there's not a lot of accredited investors. Accredited investors are about 1% of the population or less in the United States. And I heard that in other countries like Europe, under I think it's called S4, the people that are not accredited can invest in riskier things. I mean, I kind of have an opinion that people should be allowed to put their money in what they want, because in the United States they let you buy lottery tickets, they let you go to Vegas. But I'm not a registered investment advisor, but I do think that in risky investments, illiquid things, and startups and things like that, that you shouldn't have a large amount of your net worth. So somewhere probably between 1% and 5%. The problem is in some things on paper, when you get drift, they'll go up a lot in value. It could drift to 10 or 20% of your net worth, depending. But yeah, I really wouldn't deploy more than 1 to 5% of your net worth, and whatever you feel comfortable with. So for instance, I always say, when you write a check, 25,000, whatever, as an angel, or 10,000, you have to realize when you write that check, you may never see the money again. So, if that money disappeared, that it wouldn't make any difference in your lifestyle, and, it wouldn't you wouldn't get all upset or go crazy or whatever, that it has to be inconsequential.
I completely agree. Anywhere from 5% or 10%, somebody who's making, at least $200,000, $300,000 can invest into such risky investments. And do you avoid any certain industries like hardware, which can be a little difficult to scale up, or do you focus only on blockchain, and do you have investments for any specific industry?
Yeah, I've invested in hardware before, but I think they say hardware is hard. I'm starting to think that's really right, because it's really capital intensive, and I think software, at least in today's world, is easier to scale and a lot less capital intensive. And most of my investments are in software or software type things. I think it's really hard to know what the future brings. I mean, I think that the next big thing is going to come from somewhere that we didn't see coming. I mean, right now I'm really looking into cannabis tech to see what's going on, because I think that if cannabis eventually is probably going to become legal in the entire United States, I really think they should do it just for the tax revenues. They should regulate it and have it in all 50 states. And then, if people have objections, they could always, I call it a sin tax, things like cannabis and alcohol and things like that. They could have a higher tax, which would help with the state's revenues also. But I think cannabis has a lot of benefits. I mean, I've really been reading about medical cannabis, how a lot of patients can really be helped with that, especially people with chronic pain. I mean, I have chronic pain, and I've never had cannabis before, but if it became widely legal and there was a lot of research on it, how to use it medically, it could be something worth exploring. I'm not really sure, because I don't know a lot about it. Like I've heard stories that some people, I think it's called CBD oil, which is some kind of derivative of cannabis, have had a lot of results where they have a lot of pain and they say it's really helped them. But I don't know how much of that is placebo effect, it's in their head, or how much of it is really medically true. I don't know a lot about that.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff with cannabis, especially in Canada, where, or in some of those provinces, if I'm not wrong, they made it legal. But yeah, there are a lot of industries which are coming up, which will be very interesting in a couple of years. And so, where do you see it going? Do you think the whole funding scene is really heated up, and there's going to be a big crash going forward, or with SoftBank coming with $100 billion vision fund? And there are a lot of other VC funds who are raising bigger funds. What is your take on the funding thing going forward? And do you think there's going to be a big bubble later on?
Yeah, I think eventually there's ebbs and flows and cycles. Just like back in the day, they had the big NASDAQ bubble, and everybody said tech was dead after that burst, and then it reemerged with social media around 2005 to now. This is another cycle. I think that right now that all the money is going into what I call the venture stage. So it's basically from Series C on, where there's enormous amounts of checks, and it's kind of like come down where people are calling it a Series B, but they're raising enormous amounts of money. And the problem is it's taken like 13 and a half years or so for companies now to go public that have really big exits with enormous valuations. So I'm not sure how this is going to play out, but it kind of seems to me that the early investors are the ones taking the most risk, and the reward may not be the greatest, because when someone comes in with a $600 million check or $1 billion check, they're probably getting, preferential rights that you don't have, and actually taking the early investors' rights that are supposed to be with preferred stock. You have a liquidity preference, but I have a feeling, I have no proof, that if somebody's writing $1 billion check, they probably have 2x liquidity preference and things like that. So you're actually falling lower on the totem pole. So I think that it's becoming a world of super haves and have nots and startups. So it's going to be really, really hard for the newer companies that when they raise money, that you might become profitable and you're just kind of piddling along. But the biggest risk now is that your employees are going to get fed up and they're going to quit and go to the companies that are raising all this money. I mean, I like the book Blitzscaling. I think that's a great idea. But I think the problem is when everyone does something, it stops working. So if everybody's getting, $100 million and then $600 million and $1 billion checks, and everybody's blitzscaling, just spending like mad for growth, everybody can't be the next Facebook. And if everybody has a valuation like that, then all the investors didn't win as much. It's not as big of a return because of the amount of dilution. Because really, if you raise a $600 million round, you should be going public. So that's the problem. Companies are staying private too long.
Yeah, and that's what I was coming to. Tech startups are waiting longer for IPOs. We might get an IPO with Airbnb, Uber, and all. But should tech startups look for exits or employees? Should look at secondary sales, or should they stay private? What's your take on that?
Well, I guess what happened too is I think in the United States they changed some kind of law where you can have 5,000 investors, not counting the employees. That may not be the right number, but it's a larger amount without having to do the reporting of a public company. So it enabled companies to stay private longer. And when you go public, there's a lot of scrutiny. You have to do all these reports, quarterly reports, and all this auditing and just stuff that takes away from the business. So I can understand not wanting to deal with that hassle. But there has to be some kind of in between. So I think we've shifted too far. Because I know the United States tried to solve that with the Reg A Plus offering. But the problem with the Reg A Plus is those companies might technically be public, but there's no liquid market for them. So there has to be a market for the shares too. I know that companies like Uber and Airbnb, there is a pretty good secondary market. I mean, I've invested in some companies on the secondary market when they were in the 100 million valuation, and now they're supposedly 3 billion, 6 billion, or whatever they're saying. But then when you go to sell in the secondary market, a lot of times, if you chose to do so, sometimes you have to sell at a discount. So it's not truly that valuation. But for the early employees and the founders to get a little bit of money so they're not, just living off of ramen noodles or whatever you want to call it, I think that's a good thing. But if they get too much money, sometimes I think that kills like the fight, the spirit. So, if somebody's a founder and they can sell their shares and have $10 million overnight, that might be too much. But, if you live in San Francisco and you're basically in an apartment with 10 other people and on paper you're worth like $1 billion literally, but you can't cash out, I think it's okay if they can get a few 100,000 or $1 million where they can buy a house and they can actually have a car and not be like looking over their shoulder that they're paper rich, but they're actually poor. So that's a good thing. But the problem is I don't think there's any easy solution or any easy answer. Because unfortunately, I think a lot of people think starting a startup now has become prestigious. So I call it, startup tourist. And then we have social media, and there's a lot of founders that want to become CEOs so they can go speak at all these conferences. But people don't realize back in the day, Mark Zuckerberg didn't go around speaking at conferences. Jeff Bezos didn't go around speaking at conferences. They were relentlessly building a business. Now, I understand we didn't have social media back then. That's another thing too. Everybody wants to be famous on social media. I think that really takes away from building a big business from a lot of CEOs. It puts the focus on the wrong thing, because I think the focus should be on your mission. And in a lot of businesses like Amazon, relentless focus on the customer. Because if the customer's happy, and the customers are always hard to please, you're always going to be trying to improve.
Right. Yeah, James, you've given a lot of knowledge bombs. I'm really impressed with the kind of knowledge that you've amassed. If some of the listeners want to get into investing, into startups, what would you suggest them? Where should they get to learn about investing and get to learn more about the startup thing?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that, because when I first started getting into startups, I actually used YouTube. And I watched videos. Paul Graham is actually was one of my heroes. I watched him talk a lot, and I watched Sam from YC talk a lot, and then Ron Conway from SV Angel, which I heard SV Angel stopped doing seed investing, but they're gonna do follow-ons and concentrate on the companies they invest in. And also Jason Calacanis, he's one of my heroes too. He wrote a book called Angel. It's a great book. and you can listen to his podcast This Week in Startups. You can learn a lot from him. And also too, I'm studying SoftBank now, Mashi's son. I like to watch YouTube and listen to these people talk, even not their most recent things, but things from years ago, and see how they progressed through time. And believe it or not, I also like to study athletes like Michael Jordan and Kobe and like Emmitt Smith, because I think the determination of these people helps you figure out what are the building blocks of success. So watching things like that and listening to talks with Jeff Bezos, and a lot of people don't agree with Mark Zuckerberg right now, but the one thing you can say about him is, no one can argue this, is he never got off the mission. His mission was connecting everyone in the world on Facebook. Now, we may not agree with some of his tactics. You could or could not agree, but he never went off mission. With everything he did, has always supported that mission. I think there's a lot to learn from that.
No, I completely agree. I love Jason Calacanis' podcast. I loved his book. Paul Graham has written some great essays. We're going to put that in the show notes. So let's quickly do the top three. What's your favorite business book?
Well, with angel investing, it's Jason Calacanis' Angel.
Okay.
I think one great business book is Think or Grow Rich. When I was a kid, I read a lot of books, and growing up through the years, through college and all that, I think Think and Grow Rich is a really good book, because it really explains to you. I think they kind of, gets up to interpretation, but what I took from it is what you think about most of the time, and what you focus on, and what you're willing to pay the price to achieve with relentless hard work and doing the work is what you become. That's what I really got out of that.
Okay. And if you could go back in time when you started investing, what is the one thing you would have focused on, or anything you would have done differently?
Well, I think that one thing is I didn't really anticipate the way things were going to change. So, I mean, some of the companies I invested in that are, actually have a good revenue now and are profitable. Like the biggest goal in investing is, to try to find the next Uber, Airbnb, or Facebook, or Amazon. I think some of those companies, it's going to turn out all right. It's going to be a decent return. But I didn't really think about the future of like what happens if a SoftBank comes in and starts writing, billion-dollar checks. How does that make this harder? How does that keep that company or really tilt the odds in the favor that they're never going to be the next Amazon? And, will the founder, even though they're dedicated to what they're doing and they believe in their mind it's their life's work, when you hit the roadblock all of a sudden and another company raises, $100 million, $600 million is trying to steal your employees. If you lose those employees or you can't keep them, how does that company continue on the path to become the next Facebook? Because it becomes that much harder. I mean, exponentially. So I really didn't think about that. So that's what I'm trying to kind of think about now is how do I really find something that's so different that there isn't going to be any competition, that even a SoftBank or someone that money can't basically isolate you, make it so much harder. Like the share, I think is a really good one, because I don't think anybody like SoftBank could write an enormous check no matter how much money and kill them, because you can't take the credibility away from them.
Yeah, it's like what Warren Buffett says, what's the moat, which makes it a little difficult for other companies to break. So do you have any favorite online tool, for example, Gmail, Slack?
I mean, I like using LinkedIn, kind of where we connected, but I think one of my favorite online tools is YouTube to learn. And also too, there's things like edX where anyone now can get a free Harvard education. You may not get the diploma. And I understand that, people go to places like Harvard and MIT and Stanford for the network, because, you network with the people and you have your lifelong, I guess you want to call them fraternity brothers, or, people who went to the same affiliation, the same school as you, which is a great thing. But nowadays, anybody can learn anything they want off the internet. Now, sometimes you got to use critical thinking to see what makes sense and what doesn't. But it's kind of strange too, because I've never taken a computer science course, but I became a mentor at Stanford for the DApps course, which is actually a graduate course. And, I never even graduated from college. But I learned about the technology when I got into blockchain and all that. I learned all that off the internet. I mean, there's GitHub, learning about the code, watching different videos on the internet about coding and different things. And, some of it might be correct, some of it might not be, but I kind of use my own critical thinking and develop my own thoughts.
Right. No, I love the kind of hustle that you've done over the last few years. What is the best way people can reach out to you?
I think the best way people can do it, people can follow me on Twitter at Primal Key, or on Instagram at JJ Sowers, and then they can connect with me on LinkedIn. A big problem with LinkedIn now, though. There's a lot of salespeople and spamming on there, which I guess is okay if somebody has something to offer, but I think people are just shotgunning now. So if people hear this and want to connect me on LinkedIn, they should probably put a little message in there where they found me. Because one thing I started asking people is, where did you find me? Because I get a lot of inbox now, cold emails, and I always wonder how these people found you, because I've heard that there's certain groups out there now selling lists of investors or people, and people are just randomly, I call it shotgunning people.
Yeah,
the very best way, to get, I think, contact with any investor and be taken seriously is through a warm introduction. And I think that's very possible now through LinkedIn. There's always someone who's connected to you that actually knows you. Even though I think I'm connected to 18 or 19,000 people, and most of them I don't actually know. But, maybe 10% of them I actually do know. So if somebody's determined enough, I think they can find a way to get a warm introduction.
Sure, we'll put the social media links on the show note. Thank you very much for your time, James. I had an absolute pleasure speaking to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Life Self-Mastery Podcast, where we teach you how to start and grow your online business. For more information, visit Rohit's blog at www.lifeselfmastery.com.